This is Umar for BoxNation. Me and Gareth are both back in the UK after an eventful week and weekend in Riyadh. One of the best cards it was billed us ever, and it certainly delivered. I'm sure you go along with that, Gareth.
Yeah, the magnificent seven fights, top and tailed, bookended by two brilliant light heavyweight fights. One of the greatest all British fights I think we've ever witnessed in a seesawing contest between Callum Smith and Joshua Buatsi. Callum Smith, I think, his finest performance. Brutal, torrid affair over 12 rounds. I say it seesawed back and forth. And I thought Callum Smith showed all his minerals, all his qualities, his skills to just have that extra gear that Buatsi didn't have on the night. Brilliant fight. And the main event, unbelievable. Bivol bringing it this time, bringing more vim and vigour, more relentlessness, battling back into the fight in the seventh and eighth round and taking it away, 7-8-9, taking it away from Beterbiev and being the rightful winner on the night. Even though I scored it the other way narrowly, I did the swing rounds to Beterbiev. It's just one of those things. It was a brilliant night, and in between it, five other amazing fights. Everything delivered. There was drama. There was all sorts. There was drama all week with the pullouts of Floyd Schofield and Daniel Dubois, and even Josh Padley became a kind of overnight hero, didn't he?
He definitely did. Let's start at the bottom of the bill. You mentioned the light heavyweight fight between Smith and Buatsi. Buatsi was a favourite going into the fight. Where does the loser Buatsi go from this, and where does Callum Smith go from this?
Well, I think we've heard he's not kind of shy in coming forward, Turkey Al Sheikh, is he? He wants Callum Smith, no rest for the wicked, in terms of Callum Smith, wicked as he was on the night. It looks like they want him to fight Anthony Yard. I get it. Yard was there ringside doing his boogieing, looking all slick as he always does. I love that fight. That's a great contest. And I think Callum Smith in the light heavyweight rankings goes ahead of both of those guys as well, Buatsi and Yard after his performance on Saturday night. The loser? That's a very good question. Does Buatsi now face a David Benavidez? Does he stay hot? Still a
Oh,
good fight.
that's a dangerous fight to go into next,
It's a
isn't it?
dangerous fight, but maybe it's a fight he wants. I mean, Buatsi was taken to the trenches where he's never been before, but if they want big fight, who else is there out there for him right now? Bivol and Beterbiev are going to be tied up in a trilogy, so why not go for the big names in the division?
Well, I was thinking more maybe you look at maybe doing Callum Smith and Benavidez, and doing Buatsi Yard because that still sells. It's two names linked together.
If you could put them on the same card as well, it'd be amazing. I buy that. I think you pulled up a bit of. You should be a matchmaker for
Well,
Box Nation.
why don't we do Beterbiev Bivol, well, it should be Bivol Beterbiev 3 now. Benavidez v Smith and Yard v Buatsi.
When once this goes out, Turkey Al Sheikh will be on the text you saying you've got it.
And
One, two, and three on the card.
Gareth, we'll add Willie Hutchinson v Ezra Taylor on that as well.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Light heavyweight division is very strong though, isn't it? Yeah.
It really is at the moment. I think the Canon Ezra is fighting
On
next
our
weekend
bill,
on the
yeah,
card we're
March
doing
7th.
anyway.
Yeah,
The Warren Management card that we're doing at York Hall week on Friday. We're both
correct.
there, aren't we? I think I'm lead presenting and you're doing post-fight interviews. Can't wait. That's the best Warren boxing management card so far. And then we're off to Gibraltar in March as well, aren't we?
Correct. It's all happening in March for us. Okay, so that was that fight. What was next on the bill? Agit Kabayel, brilliant performance against Zhilei Zhang.
Well, I've now got Kabayel at number 5 in the world. After that on Saturday night in the heavyweight division, Usyk 1, Dubois 2, Fury 2, Dubois 3, Parker 4, and Kabayel 5. He stuck to his guns, had a great game plan. He's got a fantastic chin. He took the best that Zhang could deliver, and he literally broke his stomach open, didn't he? Just 6 punch combinations into the stomach. Drilled him basically from the second round onwards and busted and chopped up the big old oak tree and dropped him to his knees. He literally chopped down the tree. Brilliant performance. He goes from strength to strength. When you look at the Arslanbek Makhmudov victory, the Frank Sanchez victory, and now Zhilei Zhang, he's just climbing that ladder, and he's not far away from a world title fight. Not far away at all.
Don't forget he's got a win over Derek Chisora as well, Kabayel.
Yeah, that was a very weird fight that in Monaco, wasn't it? Derek
Yeah.
was overweight, and yes, 4 or 5 years ago now, that isn't it? Maybe even longer.
Yeah, Agit Kabayel with yeah, as you said, another brilliant performance. Then we had a really good fight between Vergil Ortiz Jr. and Israil Madrimov. I think most people in the sport were tipping Madrimov to win this fight. Ortiz upsetting the odds with a fantastic performance. He really took it to Madrimov and pushed him back throughout the fight.
I'm a huge advocate of Vergil Ortiz. I picked him to win. I think he's a fantastic fighter. I think he's a guy that could take over that division and actually even go up to super middleweight. To middleweight as well, and,
Yeah.
and really produce some stuff at middleweight. He's very, very clever. He's very predatory in the ring. Madrimov moved brilliantly, was very elusive, but they looked like a different weight division in there together. They looked a weight division apart. Madrimov is so tough, very durable, but he couldn't keep Ortiz off forever, even though he had some success of his own. Once he had to engage in the fight towards the latter stages, it was Ortiz's fight. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Then we moved on to Carlos Adames, who retained his WBC strap against Hamzah Sheeraz in a draw. I mean, this has caused quite a lot of controversy in terms of scorecards. How did you see the fight, Gareth?
Well, I scored it way for Adames by 6 rounds, 9 rounds to 3, 8 rounds to 4 minimum. But you know, the boxing gods were smiling on Hamzah Sheeraz. I spoke to Colin McMillan this morning on the plane on the way back, and he said he needs to watch the fight back. He thought it was very close. I think one of the judges scored it to Hamzah, didn't he? And I don't see that. I know obviously there was a draw. It was a close fight in some ways, but Adames shaded so many of the rounds for me. Movement, make himself a small target. Hamzah wasn't very active. I know he broke his hand in the fight. I interviewed Frank after the fight. I didn't know he'd broken his hand at the time because Hamzah was very subdued during the fight. You know, hands up high, moving and circling. He never really came fully to terms with Carlos Adames' movement. But I saw Adames as the victor in the fight. But it's good for Hamzah that he got through it, frankly, with that broken hand. It was surprising that he wasn't throwing his real power hand during the contest, and it makes sense that he broke it during it.
A good learning experience for him, would you say?
Oh, it's a massive, massive experience for him. Carlos Adames, we'd always said, was going to be a difficult opponent. The big thing about Hamzah is he's got to exploit his power at that level, and he's got great power, and he wasn't able to do it. He wasn't able to get that right hand off because it was so damaged. Spencer Oliver was talking to me about this. He was saying that when you break your hand sometimes, it feels like someone's spearing it with a knife every time you throw it. And he did manage to throw it a bit towards the end when he had to come on strong at the end. We saw Turki Al shake out of his seat, screaming at his Riyadh ambassador, "You've got to win these last rounds," and urging him on. And there was a big controversy around that, people saying, you know, that Turki Al-Sheikh had read the scorecards. I doubt very much whether he'd read the scorecards. He was just going into the corner to urge him on. He's a very passionate guy, and I think we can excuse him that. It does happen that people want to urge the fighter on during the contest. He did well to survive it and come through it. As I say, the boxing gods smiled on him. I don't think he drew the contest, or certainly didn't win on my card in the slightest. And I think I had it 9-3 to Adames.
Okay. What could he have done differently in there, Hamzah?
Well, he needed to be more aggressive and come forwards and push Adames back.
Gareth,
and,
you say that though. You say that when Hamzah did throw, he was missing by quite a bit. Adames' head movement was brilliant, so it's easy to say that. Maybe you know, instead of headhunting, should he have gone to the body, try to vary things up, because it seemed like he sort of had a plan A and kind of stuck to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you could see from Ricky Funes, I was able to listen to the corner during the broadcast, and Ricky Funes, they were clearly looking to take it late against Adames and come on strong late.
Well, he had a good
Um,
11th, didn't he,
he
Hamzah?
did, and Funes was keeping him calm, and then eventually said, "You've got to go, all cylinders." And Ismail Salas in Adames' corner, because I was listening into him in Spanish, was saying, "You got to keep your rhythm and keep your momentum. You know, be the champion in there. Believe you're the champion." They were urging him on. They thought it was a fairly not close contest, but they never wanted him to let up, and they wanted him to be aware of Hamza's power all the way. He needed to be more active, as you say, in there, go to the bed and body more. But I've got an image of him circling with his hands up for a lot of the fight. He will have learned so much from that. And as I say, he didn't win the world title, but he didn't get an L on his record, and that's a big plus for him.
Just the last one on him. I was actually on his flight this morning. I was with his team as well.
He's very disappointed, isn't he?
He's gutted. Yeah, he is gutted. You would be. It's a lot to process, I suppose. Um, they didn't confirm anything to me. This was like all off the record. They didn't confirm anything to me, but Frank also did mention it on the fight night to me. And his team were kind of discussing it as well, a potential move to super middleweight straight away.
Well, that was the other thing I talked about in the broadcast. I wonder whether he had a horrendous weight cuts and he had nothing in his body. He's a 6'4" man squeezing into 160 pounds. You know, he's growing all the time. It makes sense to go to super middleweight. I spoke to Colin McMillan this morning about that as well, that he can't stay there for long. They'd already talked about a couple more fights, winning a world title and then moving up. I think it's very sensible. He's a broad figure. He's clearly draining his body down to get to that weight. And a move to super middleweight wouldn't do him any harm at all.
Well, yeah, look, Canelo and Skull obviously boxing on the Riyadh season card in May. And then, Canelo's going to go into this super fight with Terence Crawford. So the belts at super middleweight are going to get fragmented. So he could kind of pick up a world title, maybe have a couple at super middleweight, and then go for a vacant world title at super middle.
Picking up a world title is a very easy way of saying it.
But you know what I mean? Fight for a vacant strap as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what we also need to add about Hamzah in this fight is Adames has a lot more experience in terms of amateurs and pros than Hamzah, and he's also a very elusive fighter, even though he carries power. I thought Hamzah took all his shots really well. The kind of opponent that's always going to suit Hamzah is a guy that wants to come and fight you. Adames managed to walk him down and be elusive, but he wasn't really engaging that much. And I say he was making himself a small target. I think as Hamzah's career progresses, we're going to see him in bouts with guys that want to come forward more. And I think he'll get that at super middleweight.
If he stays at middleweight, what about a fight with Denzel Bentley?
Well, I mean, we'd all love that fight. They're both names in British boxing. It's a terrific fight for him. That's a style that suits him, and that's what he might need next to get him back into a place where he's happy with himself. Because knowing Hamzah like we do, and as you say, you spoke to him kind of off the record about where he needs to go and where he doesn't. We know Hamzah well enough to know that he'd have been really disappointed with that performance, really disappointed. And I hope he's not too down on himself, because fighters do have dips in their careers.
Yeah. Okay, then we moved on to the hero of the night, Josh Padley, flying in when he was just getting on with his day work earlier in the week in England, took on one of the best fighters. I know you see Shakur Stevenson, I think, as the best fighter in the world, pound for pound. What did you make of that fight, Gareth?
Well, he's potentially the number one pound for pound. He's not at the moment. What did I make of it? Well, some poor soul in fucking Doncaster has got only half their solar panels on their roof right now. But Josh Padley is apparently $500,000 to the good, with a new house about to be bought for him. Look, boxing's a weird sport. He got beaten virtually every round for 9 rounds. He got knocked down by body shots 3 times in the 9th round by Shakur Stevenson, who engaged with him. But Josh gave as good as he got. probably 4 levels above what he is at the moment in terms of fighting Shakur. Gave everything in there. Lost the fight, but won the crowd. Lost and Stevenson won the fight, but lost the crowd. He was booed in the arena. And right now, with Gervonta Davis fighting Lamont Roach at the weekend, you've got to say that Gervonta is the man in that matchup. We need to see more from Stevenson. I don't particularly. I love his style, but he's one of those guys like a Floyd Mayweather who people want to watch to see if other people are going to beat him, and they'll put heavy bulls in against him next to try and knock him out, and that's what we'll get the whole time in his career, because he's not a knockout guy, he's not a stoppage guy, even though he stopped Padley and he stopped several others in his career. People want to see more from him. It's a weird sport, isn't it, that we expect more from him, and yet he's undefeated and he's very skilled, but just added to the week.
His hands are an issue, though, aren't they? He's admitted.
And his hands are an issue. And same thing as Floyd Mayweather. Got a certain stage into his career, and the hands needed protecting and looking after, because the overuse of them in his office, in the skilled office of boxing, meant that the hands weren't going to be great forever, and that the little niggles will be there. They'll always be there for Shakur. Right now, Gervonta beats him, in my view.
Okay. All right. Then we saw Joseph Parker go and do a real job on Martin Bakole. You went on TalkSport and said the fight shouldn't have happened, Gareth.
Did I?
Did you not?
I might have. Listen, what I said was it's very late notice for Martin Bakole, but in a way it saved the show. You have to praise both Martin Bakole and Joseph Parker for taking it at the 11th hour as well. Martin Bakole was clearly out of shape, 2 stone heavier than he would want to have been, maybe at least a stone. He'd clearly been sitting on the sofa and enjoying himself in Congo. A very, very late journey to come there from Congo via Ethiopia. I travelled in late on a very long journey myself from Hong Kong, on a similar kind of time zone. And, I waded through Saturday and the 9-hour broadcast, thinking, how on earth is Martin Bakole even managing to get into the ring? So you've got to praise him for that. I understand he was rewarded handsomely, which is brilliant. He's going to still fight F.A. Jag, but obviously it won't be for the Eliminator now. Because he's lost a fight, but that fight is going ahead in May, I hear.
I find that a bit mad though, because he won't be able to spar for a while.
28 days, yeah.
28 days. So when I guess he can still start his camp and then get into some sparring before.
That is an issue. That is an issue about about sparring, but there is a promise of still May. But I understand might be a change of venue for him. I can't reveal all of that. Spoke to Billy Nelson, who said, look, we took it. One of the watchwords in boxing, in fight sports, is always be ready, and he wasn't ready. You can't be ready on 48 hours' notice, but I know that he's paid handsomely, as were many of the fighters on the card, obviously, but his stock has fallen in a sense, but his position in the division and the fight with Ajagba is still going to go on. The difficulty for me is where Joseph Parker goes from here. Does he tread water and wait for the winner of Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois, who I now believe will fight each other, because that's the way the dice will fall? Or does he take a very difficult fight maybe with Agit Kabayel? That's a fantastic matchup, those two.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Parker-Bakole is they're both managed by Spencer Brown and Goldstar. They might do the fight. They might do an in-house.
They're 4 and 5 in the division for me as well. And the difficulty is it
4 and 5. I'd say Parker's 3 and Kabayel's 4.
Remember, I've got Fury in there at 2.
Oh, right. Well, I'm thinking he's retired. I'm saying.
Yeah, I think he'll be back for Anthony Joshua.
Okay. All right. So I was thinking about this on the flight home. you know, what you said there makes total sense for Dubois to go into an undisputed fight with Usyk. There's a lot of controversy there from the first fight. It will sell. Usyk is calling for that fight himself.
Yeah.
That does leave Parker, unfortunately, in a bit of a tight spot. You,
Treading water,
huh?
treading water. I mean, you look down the rest of the fighters in the division. Um, the only other
I've got
fight,
one for you. I've got one for you. I've just thought of it, and he's fought these guys.
Parker-Bakole,
He's fought these guys before. The winner of White Joyce,
he could fight the winner of White Joyce.
because he
He
goes
could
in as a big
fight Fabio
favourite,
Wardley.
and it's a big fight. They're two big names.
The thing is with Joe, he'll fight anyone, any place, any time, as he said. I agree with you that they might. I mean, I really like the Parker-Kabayel fight as a fight. You know, as an entertaining fight for fans.
But also both of these guys, not the you know, I said they're both with Gold Star, so they'd be kind of knocking one off. But one's a WBC mandatory now in Caballero, and obviously Parker's deserves a world title shot. So there's a lot of jeopardy in that fight. They'd have to get paid a lot. I think what the winner of White Joyce makes complete. I've just thought of it just now.
Yeah,
Just to stay busy for one fight before a world title shot.
and also that takes place on April the 5th, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So it's not a massively long wait for that fight to take place. Just over 6 weeks potentially. So 5 weeks almost. It's a difficult one for Joe. I mean, I
yeah,
hope he
yeah.
was.
He's lost to both, so he'd be getting revenge over one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he beats both of them in my view at the moment. He looks really good at 18 stone, 17 and a half, 18 stone. Um, there were still dangers in that first round against Bakole. There were moments in that first round where because we know what Bakole can do with those short chopping punches, you still thought it was a 4 round fight for Bakole. He was always going to have to come and give everything in the first 4 rounds, especially when you saw the size and shape of him. When he stepped into the ring and knowing that he travelled kind of overnight and didn't get there, and then did media work when he arrived because he's so up about having the fight.
He
But
said
so
to
yeah,
me, he said to me, and he said it on the interview. You know, but only about 24 hours ago we spoke. He said that he was falling asleep in the changing room.
yeah. I spoke to Robert Smith just to clear this up. I spoke to Alexander Usyk ringside for the Talksport broadcast, and he said he wanted to fight Daniel Dubois. So I think we can take that as a given that they'll look to try and make that fight. And Joseph's missed out on that world title shot, which is a real shame for him. I also spoke to Robert Smith about Dr. Neil Scott examining Daniel Dubois because there's conspiracy theories knocking about that he did have a fever. They did. Neil Scott said there's no way he can go ahead and have the fight. They might have worried about him, about his genuinely worried about his health, because fighters will try and hide illnesses going into fights or stitches on the top of their head and cover it up with their hair and gel their hair down over it, because he would have been paid handsomely for Saturday night and he fancied beating Parker. So when Robert Smith explained it to me on Saturday night, as Frank had explained later on in the week, it's a very bizarre scenario. If it hadn't been for it being in Saudi Arabia and the amount of money that's available for these cards now, we might have lost that fight from the card, in my view. If it had been in the UK in the old kind of style of boxing without Saudi Arabian investment, we'd have lost the fight off the card. And unfortunately, and I know we're going to talk about the main event, for the fans, Parker and Dubois was the real thriller. And also, Bakole even stepping up late was a bit of a thriller for the fans, even though it was not a disappointment, but it was. I'm just glad Billy Nelson stepped in when he did, because I don't think Bakole should have continued after that first knockdown.
Just lastly on the heavyweights, there will be plenty of people saying, and I completely understand why, given Parker's run of Wilder, Zhang, and now Bakole, that Dubois Parker should be rescheduled, and then the winner gets Usyk. But from Daniel Dubois' perspective, from a financial perspective, from an undisputed perspective, you can't really blame him because the Parker fight was just a voluntary. You can't really blame him if he does go straight into the Usyk rematch, can you?
Poetic justice would be Joseph Parker to fight Daniel Dubois and them to
Yeah.
reschedule the bout. Parker barely had a scratch on him during the fight, so he'd be ready to go again. Um, who knows? They may reschedule that. You don't know, but my feeling is at the moment, and common sense, knowing boxing, is telling me that it is going to be Usyk and Dubois next. I think Dubois will get more for facing Usyk. And
Is that not
Usyk is
is that not the biggest fight in the division, excluding
it is. It is
Usyk?
the biggest fight in the division.
Yeah.
And Usyk's calling for it. He's got itchy feet, wants to get back into camp, wants to fight. And if he wins the undisputed back by winning the belt back that was taken off him, the IBF, it may be the last of him. He may just get dragged back for one fight with Jai Opetaia when Opetaia comes up to heavyweight. That's the fight I'd like to see him in. But yeah, he calls a lot of shots right now, Usyk, and it's fascinating. And even Anthony Joshua there ringside, who's had elbow surgery, we haven't discussed him today. He's obviously sitting there waiting for Tyson Fury to declare his interest in coming back, even though he's got a load of other announcements about to come up, I understand, which we both know about, but they're off the record right now. And it's not him announcing he's coming back to fight.
No, it's not that. The main event was just the icing on the cake. It was quite remarkable to watch two of the greatest light heavyweights, two of the greatest fighters, actually, I think now of all time, going in there. They're so lucky, actually. They've got each other in this era, and we need to see a trilogy, don't we, Gareth?
Well, we say they're lucky to have each other, and they are, but my word, are they taking something out of each other in terms of their lumps. The thing is about both of them, 24 rounds now, really pleased for Bivol to have won it back because I wanted to see a trilogy. They're both good enough and big enough and amazing enough in terms of figures in the sport, particularly in the sport, to have 36 rounds. Their names will always be associated. I imagine we're going to get a summer fight between them, or if not, an October fight to open Riyadh season again, maybe, because they're going to need a long rest after this. That fight will have taken a lot out of them. But Bivol did what he said he was going to do going into it, be more active. I thought he buried back into the fight in the 7th, 8th, 9th rounds, came back with amazing zeal and vim and vigour to win that portion of the contest and seesaw it back in his favour. He was brilliant on the night. He blocked a lot of punches. Beterbiev showed signs of wear and tear, showed some signs of wear and tear, being around 40 now in age. And I think Bivol goes into the third fight as favourite. It was brilliant entertainment from first to last, how those guys never show the pain they're in, the poker faces they carry, and their skill sets is just extraordinary. And I spoke to a lot of fans on the way back who'd gone out there, and they said it was the most amazing thing to witness. And because everyone's absolutely stone cold sober, they remember every detail of every fight on the card. It was an amazing night. It's obviously not the last crescendo because we're going to get one more. And it's going to be a trilogy for the ages, Umar, when it happens. I think it'll be probably, I expect 8 months' time that we'll get it.
I don't know if you said in that, but His Excellency has said that he wants to, do the fight if Artur Beterbiev accepts.
I think Beterbiev has already put it out there that he said, I didn't really want the second fight, but if we're going to do the third, then we'll do it. You know what he's like. But I thought he showed more signs of wear and tear in the fight. It was nice to see the celebrations of Bivol's team and how much it meant to them all. Eddie Hearn acting as usual, overdoing the Don't use that as a headline, please. I'm teasing Eddie there because, but it was nice to see him enjoying it because he's put a lot of work in with Bivol as well, and Vadim. Very pleased for Vadim as well. He's a fantastic guy.
Brilliant guy, Vadim, corner.
Yeah, and what gentleman. I maybe said it at the beginning and I'll say it at the end, unless there's more questions. 4 175-pound gentlemen on that card, and they're an absolute credit to boxing. And the one thing I'd add about Beterbiev and Bivol, the sad thing is, outside boxing, they're not really well known. I know that the IBA want to try and put the fight on in Moscow, help to put the trilogy on in Moscow, but we shall see where it lands. I think it might well open Riyadh's season. That's what I think. Later on in the year.
Well, if we get Usyk, Dubois 2 and Beterbiev, Bivol, well, Bivol, Beterbiev 3 in the summer and October, that will be a treat. Gareth, appreciate your time and your review of the weekend. And I shall see you at the Eubank Ben press conference on Thursday, the London one.
Indeed, lovely to see you. Glad you're home safe. Take
Cheers,
care.
Gareth. Thank you, mate. Bye.